Hi, and thank you for joining us. Today we continue looking at our thoughts about the Lord's Prayer, found in Matthew and in the Gospel of Luke. Let's just recap the whole prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And today we're particularly looking at that line, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now we know that God doesn't lead us into temptation. James 1 verse 13 says, "No one should say, 'God is tempting me,' for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone." So it can't mean that God is potentially going to lead us into temptation. But we also know that living on this earth, we do face temptation. We face trials and testings. Being a Christian doesn't make us exempt from being human. So our prayer is that when faced with trials and temptations, God would deliver us. The devil would want to weaken our resolve. He would want us to fall into the temptation. God, on the other hand, would like to see us develop, become more of a Christ-like character as we overcome the trials and temptations. This little illustration might help us a little to understand what the purpose is sometimes of the trials and temptations we might face. The children were frightened. It was night and the car had broken down on a small country lane. There was no choice but to walk to find help. Fortunately, their father was with them, and somehow that allayed their fears. His courage was something that they drew courage from themselves. The rustling in the trees, the sudden screeching of the hoot owl, the sudden noise of animals scampering the hedgerows didn't frighten them so much when their father was nearby. Ahead, through the thicket of trees, there shone a light, and in order to get to it, they were going to have to go through the dark thicket of trees. At this point, Sandy, the youngest of the children, cried out, "Dad, not that way, please. It's too dark." Then she paused. "But if it's the best way, Dad, then you stick to us like superglue." Is it a bit like that when we face temptation? That we actually cry out to God to stay near us, to deliver us from the temptations that we face. We ask that we don't become overwhelmed by the trials and temptations, that we don't fall into the devil's schemes, but rather that our Father in heaven delivers and rescues us, that we might live lives that bring glory to him. As we pray, we can also take some action ourselves. We can encourage each other to persevere and keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. If we look at Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 2, it talks about us persevering and fixing our eyes on him. Secondly, we can put off our old natures and renew our minds, filling them with the truths of God's word. Like in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 22 to 24, where we're encouraged to strip off the old, put on the new, and be renewed in our minds. And thirdly, we can be obedient to what Christ teaches us, who he calls us to be, salt and light in this dark world, as we find in Matthew 5. So keep praying. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, and go and shine for him today. God bless.